Big law firms continue to race to the bottom to prove just how willing they are to aid authoritarianism. Welcome back to another episode of Pragmatic Optimists. I'm Rachel Cohen, formerly of Skadden Arps, and joined by Rhode Island State Senator Tiara Mack. We're going to talk about the role of large corporations and corporate law firms in the disintegration of free speech rights that we've seen in the indefinite hiatus of Jimmy Kimmel's show, and the kind of frankly nefarious backdrop to that, which as I dug in today, I realized has to do, once again, with the law firms that made affirmative deals with the Trump administration, offering up free legal services back in March. In this case, it's a law firm called Kirkland and Ellis. And we are once again seeing, if you follow me on Substack, if you've been following along with Hot Takes, you're probably aware that I've been taking a look at which large corporate law firms represent the companies that are entering into strange deals with the Trump administration. So for example, NVIDIA, with their willingness to give the Trump administration a portion of their income on certain chips that they sell to China. AMD, same deal. Intel selling 10% of the company to the government. Throughout those deals, there's this common thread where these companies have significant dealings with one of the, I believe, 8 or 9 law firms that made affirmative deals with the Trump administration back in March, opening themselves to giving him certain amounts of promised work, which surprised me at first, because if I were a company, I would not want to be represented against the government by a law firm that also owed the government a bunch of money and had made clear that they were willing to roll over to the government. But it's becoming increasingly clear that what these deals were meant to do in the first place was indicate willingness to work on deals that accelerate authoritarianism. And I hate to say that so boldly or so baldly or both, but it has to be true, because there's no other reason for these firms to have entered into these deals and then represented these companies. So on the Jimmy Kimmel deal specifically, what we're seeing is this merger happening between Nexstar and Tenga, which own a number of different local news channels. And Nexstar in particular owns a bunch of ABC affiliates. They are under pressure from the FCC because they need the FCC to approve their merger. And then Nexstar says to everyone, we're not going to run Jimmy Kimmel anymore, because they say it's because he spoke negatively about Charlie Kirk, but what he really did was speak negatively about the government and MAGA movement in his monologue. And represented by Kirkland and Ellis, a law firm that entered into a deal with the Trump admin. So that's kind of the posture. And Tiara, I'm curious from your perspective, what kind of concerns you have about like the politicization of the FCC in this moment, and what that could really look like in terms of platforming and impacts on political discourse.
I mean, we've all read George Orwell. I think we know the reference well enough, but that's the immediate, like, scary story that we can all point to. But even more nefarious than that is not only the willingness of the big law community to engage in this type of behavior, but what does it truly mean for us, Rachel? We see the erosion of our Supreme Court system. We have some of the local circuit courts that are kind of holding it down. And then we have the local courts and attorney generals that are holding it down. But we're now seeing the erosion of corporations who are willing to do anything in order to capitalize on the system, where Trump has been able to be a billionaire maker in some cases. But then we also have the courts. And in order to ascend, you have to sell out. You have to overly present that you are going to be the most willing attorney to say whatever it takes in order to appease this government. And so if all of these branches have been bought out, what hope do we have on the ground, or what tools do we have as citizens to really push back, or what tools do we need to understand? It's hard for a regular person who's not paying attention to the courts, who's not paying attention to these mergers. There's so many mergers that are happening right now. But what are the tools or the dots that need to be more firmly connected between those entities and the further erosion of our rights? And how do we continue to fight back? And who is it that we're fighting back against?
I think, honestly, I saw something once where a person was talking about how the first couple of times that they realized how deeply connected harms in this country were to each other and to systems of like extractive racial capitalism and the prison legal system and all of these other things, that it made them feel really overwhelmed at the enormity of the problem at the scale. But that the more they thought about it, the more it actually soothed them because they had a unifying theory of what needed to change. And I know that on this, I do think I can speak for both of us when I say that our unifying theory is really rooted in building community and educating oneself on the way that these things are connected and being honest about it. And I think like sitting with some of the discomfort that comes from realizing that we've participated in systems that are ultimately quite harmful to a lot of people globally and within this country. And so I think that the takeaway I'd like people to have, the takeaway that I'm reaching over the last 6-8 months, I never thought that corporations were going to save us, right? But I did not expect the degree of moral degradation that would come out of these institutions, these large corporate law firms, the companies at play here. We absolutely must save ourselves through community engagement and education. And we're seeing huge growth in mutual aid networks and rapid response groups. And that does allow me to stay hopeful and optimistic. So we wanted to make sure that you were aware of what's going on with these, hey bud, what's going on with, that keeps me optimistic as well.
Love it.
So we want to make sure that you're aware of what's going on with these law firms and the role that they play, but we'll leave it here and be back to chat with you more on the Legal AF platform, on the Midas Touch Network. Like, subscribe, follow along, and we'll see you soon, Praggies.
Bye, Praggies.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.